Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Well, fall is in the air, and that means it's time to winterize our camper. So in today's video, I'm going to take you through winterizing the water system. We're going to take a look at what we do with the electrical system, and also just some general steps to make sure that your camper is going to have a nice winter and be ready for camping in the springtime. Well, let's get into it. All right, so before I get into the video today, I just want to give a huge thank you to the 2,150 people who have taken the time to subscribe to the channel. That support makes a world of difference. Thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, again, please consider hitting that like and that subscribe button. Like I said, makes a big difference for us. Okay, let's get into the project. Okay, so the very first thing that we're gonna get done is we are gonna winterize the water system in the camper. This is arguably the most important thing that you've gotta get done, okay? So you gotta be mindful of any taps you have in the system. We wanna make sure we get all of the water out of them, and we wanna get that water replaced with antifreeze ideally. Here in our northern climate, you have gotta make sure that you've got this stuff in your lines, or else a lot of bad things are gonna happen. You're gonna rupture taps, you could rupture your water lines. Bad stuff in general. So I'm gonna show you how to do that, all right? First thing that we're gonna need is winterproof antifreeze, basically plumbing antifreeze. You use this stuff for boats, cabins, campers, you name it. The stuff is usually good down to -50, so I think we're gonna have our bases covered, all right? So the first thing that I've got to do is I've got to get into my baggage compartment here where my pump is located, okay? This is going to change depending on your make and model of camper. The one we're going to be doing today is a 2012 Keystone Cougar, okay? My water pump is located in here, right beside my hot water tank. Newer campers, you usually will have a wet bay or something set up. It's actually a heck of a lot easier on the newer rigs because everything's very clearly labeled, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what we've got to do. So, coming on into the baggage compartment here, very first thing that I've got to do is I got to locate where my intake is for my water pump. So if you guys take a look over here, this little device that's installed, most campers will have this in here already, but if not, I can put a link in the description below where you can actually buy one of these. And what this does is this sits in line between your water tank, and it also gives you access to another line here. So what we're going to do is instead of having our pump, our water pump inside the camper pull water from the water tank, we're going to have it pull water from this line. This line is going to go right here into my 5-gallon pail, okay? So I'm just going to move this guy over here. We're going to get it open. Pull the top off. Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to unfurl my line here like this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop this into here. Let's just get this moved into a better spot, maybe about over here. All right, so I'm going to dump my line in here. There we go, touchdown, pull it back just a bit. Okay, so now that I'm in here, what I've got to do, I got to go to my bypass here, and I'm going to turn my bypass in the opposite direction. This is gonna make it pull water from my jug of antifreeze now, or pull the antifreeze out of the jug rather. Now, one other thing that we've got to keep in mind here. On the camper, we've got our hot water tank over here, okay? Now, what we're gonna have to do is we've got to bypass the hot water tank, okay? If we don't bypass the hot water tank, what's gonna happen is we're gonna fill 5 gallons of antifreeze into the hot water tank. We don't need to do that. That's a huge waste of effort and your money. There's gonna be a drain plug on here. We're gonna pull the drain plug after, but what I'm gonna do, let's just head back into the compartment here, and I'm gonna hope you guys can see this on the camera. There's a little bypass right down here. And what that bypass is gonna do is it's gonna bypass the hot water tank altogether. So I'm gonna go and flip that bypass like that. And now what it's gonna do is it's gonna bypass the tank completely. What I'm gonna do is, there should be a check valve in here, and my plan is that I'm gonna leave the water in the tank currently to give me back pressure in there, okay? And what that should do is, if the check valve has failed, it would prevent all that antifreeze from dumping back in there because there's already liquid in there maintaining that pressure, okay? So now that I've got this set up like this, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna head into the camper and I'm gonna turn my pump on, okay? When I fire on that pump, it should kick on, but eventually once the line's primed and there's enough pressure in there, it should stop, okay? So let's go do that next. So now we're inside the camper and here we've got our water pump. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna flip that switch. Okay, hopefully the mic picks this up. I can hear the pump running right now. It's running, it's running, it's running. Should be pulling antifreeze from that pail. I'm gonna be patient. I'm gonna go check it just to be safe. Yay! It finally stopped. Okay. So don't panic if you hear that pump running for a little while. It's got to pull air all the way up and through that line. But you heard, eventually that thing did kick off, all right? So what we're going to do now, let's go to the sink here, and I'm going to go and I'm going to turn the tap, and I should now hear my pump fire up. Let's start there. So now we've got the lines primed with antifreeze. I'm going to start with the kitchen sink here, all right? So I've got my pump turned on. I'm going to start with my cold water tap first, okay? So let's see what happens. This should eventually turn from clear to pink if things are working the way they're supposed to. Let's see what happens. And right now we're just running the rest of the water out of the line, and there we go, bright pink. Hopefully it shows up on the camera, but there it is. So we know that line is good, okay? Now remember, we turned that hot water tank bypass on. I'm gonna do the same thing with my hot line now. So let's turn that one on. And there we go, it's gonna go clear for a bit. And there we go, turning bright pink, perfect. And I'm going to turn that off. So now we know kitchen sink is good, all right? That antifreeze is also going to sit in the traps here a little bit as well, and that's perfect because you don't want those to crack over time, all right? So now we've got the kitchen done. Now we're going to go up to the bathroom. All right, so now we're in the bathroom. So here we're going to have to take care of the sink, the shower, and the toilet. So just like last time, I've got my pump turned on. I'm going to start by running my cold water line here. Once I can see that runs pink, I'm then going to go and transition over to the hot water line. So let's do that. So fire this up. We can see the water's clear. Hey, there we go, bright pink. Perfect. And I usually like to let that run for about 5-10 seconds when it goes pink, just to make sure we're pulling antifreeze through the line and displacing all of that water. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other line. We see it goes clear. Hey, and then there it is, bright pink. Perfect. All right, so we know that now the bathroom sink's good. All right, let's go ahead and do the toilet next. All right, so sink's done. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the toilet. So to do the toilet, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna put my foot on the flusher and just hold it until I see it running pink, okay? So here we go. Okay, so I can see it's still watercolored, and there's the antifreeze coming. I wanna make sure I can see every one of these ports here shooting pink. And yeah, here we go, pink, 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 all the way around. Perfect, toilet's done. All right, so that just leaves the shower. All right, so let's get that done. So what I like to do for the shower here is I'll pull the shower head out, kind of like this, and then I'm just gonna direct that stream down to my drain here. So just like last time, I'm gonna start with my cold. Okay, again, I can see now my water's starting to run pink, means I know I'm on the right track here, all right? So let that run for a second or two, turn it off, go back to the hot. All right, same thing, it'll run clear for a second, and then back to pink. Perfect. As soon as we see that pink coming through those lines, we know we're good. And yeah, she's bright pink. Perfect. All right, so you might think at this point, awesome, hey, all my stuff's done. There's one more we gotta do, and that's gonna be the outdoor shower. And that's the one where if you don't ever use that outdoor shower, you might forget about it. So yeah, let's go get that one taken care of, and then we know all of the water systems in here are done. So at this point, we have one last piece of plumbing we've got to winterize, and that's going to be the outdoor shower here. So I don't know, for whatever reason, they decide to lock this. Okay, I guess they're scared about people using your external shower. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open this up, all right? And here is where our external shower lives. So just like we did for the rest of the system, I'm going to pull this fella out of here, all right? Oh, this thing's probably like never been used. At least we've never used it since we've owned the camper, so this thing's super stiff. So I'm gonna just aim this at the bucket here, all right? This is gonna probably make a giant mess, so you know, you'll get to see all the fun here. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna open up that tap. Same thing, I can see water coming out, and I'm gonna go until it turns pink. Yeah, there we go. So that side I know is good, okay? And now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side of this water line here, okay? And flip that on. Okay, turns clear for a bit. And All right, wait till it goes bright pink. There we go. Excellent. All right. Now that we've done that, we've got the entire plumbing system with antifreeze through it. So one other thing that you're going to want to be mindful of with the system here is once this is done, if your camper has a low point drain or anything like that, you can go and open those up, and that's going to help any moisture, water, antifreeze, anything that's in the system will kind of drain out or settle through those points. You want to make sure you got the pump off when you do that. I will probably end up doing the same thing in here is once I've pulled my line out of my antifreeze, I'll open my taps, let everything run off to get some of the pressure out of the system, and then we're good to go from there. So now that we've got the entire system with antifreeze in the lines, let's go ahead now and we're going to drain that hot water tank. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my external cover off here, like that. All right. Now what I've got to do is I've got to locate my drain plug. Now hopefully it's going to pick it up on the camera, but my drain plug is right down here. Okay, so I'm going to take a pair of pliers. I'm going to turn them like this. Bang! So there was a little bit of pressure in the system. Here's the anode. But yeah, we're just gonna let that glug on out. I put a pail under here to try to catch some of that water. I minimize a little bit of that mess, but yeah, there we go. What we're gonna do now is while this is draining, I'm gonna move on over to where the plug is for my freshwater tank. I'm gonna pull that out as well. So I gotta get dried off here. So now that we've got that hot water tank empty, next thing we've got to take care of right here is going to be this drain plug. This is for my freshwater tank, so I'm just going to loosen this off. It should be empty already, but yeah, there we go. Important thing is you want to make sure that you don't lose this cap, so put this somewhere safe. The anode for the hot water tank that I pulled out and it exploded everywhere, I just left that in the compartment from the hot water tank. All right, so before we move into the camper, one other thing I want to touch on is going to be our wastewater systems here, both our black and our gray. All right, so what I like to do is, first of all, before you start winterizing, make sure you've got these tanks empty or as close to empty as possible. All right, it's going to make things go a heck of a lot easier for you. What I like to do is once I've ran the antifreeze through the traps, the system, everything else in the interior of the camper, I come out here and I like to open up all of my valves and drain whatever's in those tanks out, that last little bit of residual, and then you're going to dispose of that accordingly. It's a good idea, and for me at least anyway, a good best practice is to leave those valves all in the open position. So my black water tank, I'm going to have that valve open, and for both of my gray water tanks, for both my washroom and my galley. Okay, when I leave those open, I know beyond any reasonable doubt there's no moisture that can settle and freeze in those areas, even if I have the antifreeze mixed with it. Again, it just gives me peace of mind to leave all of those valves open. All right, so when it comes to winterizing one of these, as you can see, folks, I'm a fan of being able to suck the antifreeze in through my pump, distribute it through my system that way. Some guys will prefer hooking up an air line, blowing compressed air to evacuate all the water out of the system. You can see there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is the method that I've used forever, and it's always been successful for me, okay? But let me know in the comments below what works best for you when it comes to winterizing one of these units. Again, another really important thing to be mindful of is the fact that you got to get most of the water out. If you've ever seen any of my videos on winterizing a pool, you know that you've got to get the majority of water out of the system, because when water freezes, it expands, right? And when it expands, if it doesn't have anywhere to go, that's when you start getting ruptured pumps, ruptured plumbing, all that bad stuff starts to happen, okay? So again, it's about being able to evacuate as much of that out of there as possible. The antifreeze is good, it's gonna help, but I always like to try to make sure I can alleviate as much pressure as I can in that system. To me, the antifreeze is the insurance of over and above that, all right? So something to be mindful of. Let's get on into the camper. All right, so that brings us inside the camper now. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna give everything in here a pretty thorough cleaning. We're gonna pull everything out of our cabinets. We're gonna clean out our fridge here. Again, just get everything that we would normally not wanna have frozen for the winter out of here. By doing that, you're giving yourself a good head start on the springtime, okay? Another thing to be mindful of is by removing all your food, your dry goods, things like that. If rodents did happen to get into your camper over the winter, the chances of there being maximum destruction go down a little bit. If you're removing those food sources and those things that they could use to make a home in, it's gonna make it a little bit better, all right? So let's get that done. Oh, I've been looking for these for a while here. Huh. Now, is it really camping if you don't have an ice maker with you? Got to keep those drinks cold. Oh, one of the awesome things about going through your camper is when you find gems like this that have been left over. Ha, now I got snacks for the drive home. Right on. All right, so this brings us to our fridge here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that I've cleaned everything out of both the fridge and the freezer. Once I've done that, I'm actually gonna power this off. Now, these doors, they seal tight, okay? One thing I'm gonna recommend is that you leave these open a crack, and you can pop something in here like a dish towel or anything like that just to prevent it from closing all the way. If you leave these things sealed up, oh, usually it's super gross come springtime. You're gonna get tons of mold and mildew building up in here. But again, good opportunity, clean everything out of the fridge, take your foodstuffs out, give it a good wipe down, and then you know you're gonna be good to go for springtime. Plus, who knows what else you're gonna find in here? Haha, right on! So when I'm putting the camper away for the season, I also just like to make a quick checklist of things that I need to get taken care of before springtime. So for instance, I'm going to be going through my slide wiper seals, I've got to do a quick repair on my door lock, and I'm also going to be doing some work on my suspension. So make sure that you like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of that content coming this spring. All right, so we've got the water system taken care of, and we've packed up all the important stuff that we don't want to leave in here for the winter. I also did give it a thorough cleaning in here where I vacuumed, I swept, cleaned out the fridge, the countertops, all that sort of stuff. Now, the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus my attention on bringing in my slide rooms and my awning, all right? My camper's been in storage at my mom and dad's place here for quite some time. It's an older pole shed, so it's not completely sealed at the roof line, so I do get some pine needles and things like that that are gonna settle on the roof of the camper. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get up on a ladder, and I'm just gonna make sure that I've cleaned the tops of the slides off so that when I bring them in, I'm not pulling any debris inside the camper, or I'm not getting anything embedded into that roof membrane, because that is bad news. You don't want to have that happening. If you've got slide toppers on your camper, fantastic. You just have to basically give them the once over to make sure that everything's good to go. All right, so we also want to make sure that our propane system's taken care of for the winter. Really, all that I do for my propane is I come into my compartment here, all right? I've got my 2 tanks here. I just want to make sure that I've got those in the off position, okay? In the highly unlikely event there was ever a leak inside the trailer, I don't want that filling up with propane. So I'll come in here and I'll just turn both of my tanks to the off position, and then I know that I'm good to go for the rest of the season here. All right, folks, so we're in the home stretch. We've got the water and the plumbing system taken care of. We have cleaned out the interior of the camper, gotten the fridge taken care of, which is a big one, all right? Got all the items out of the camper we don't want to leave in here for the season. We have taken care of the slide rooms, the awning, cleaned those all off, brought those in, shut the propane off. Now we've got to turn our attention to the electrical system in the camper, all right? So, our camper runs on a 12-volt battery primarily, but you also have 110 shore power for things like your TV, your air conditioners, those sorts of things, all right? So some folks, when they store their camper for the winter, they've got the luxury of being able to store it somewhere where they can keep it plugged in year-round. That's cool, because that'll actually keep the battery maintained, keep everything topped up, should be fine. But for the majority of folks, especially in really, really cold climates where you're getting down to -20, -30, -40, Doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. At that point, cold is cold, okay? A lot of times what we've got to do is we've got to pull these batteries out of here, okay? I personally like to disconnect the battery, and then I'll go and I'll put it inside the basement, put it on a piece of cardboard. Periodically, I'll hook it up to a battery maintainer just to keep the charge topped off on it. From my experience, by doing that, these batteries will end up lasting you for quite a few years. I know some folks who they don't do anything for the winter, and they're surprised in 2 to 3 years' time when they have to go and replace those batteries. I usually save the 12 volt in the battery system for the last thing that I do, because at that point, once I've pulled that battery out, I have no more power going to the coach, and then it's going to stay where it's going to stay for the rest of the season, right? Again, just a few more tips for folks too. Storage makes a huge difference in the longevity of these units, all right? So ideally, if you can store it somewhere enclosed, like I'm very fortunate, I get to keep mine at my mom and dad's place in our shop here, so I keep it out of the majority of the elements for the winter. The shop's not heated, but you know what? It's keeping the sun, the UV rays, the wind, the snow off of it, and that makes a big difference for the longevity of the roof, things of that nature, okay? If you don't have the ability to store it indoors somewhere, then you know what? Your next best option is to get an RV cover for it, or at the very least, try tarping that roof, okay? Again, if your plan is you've got tons of money and you only want to keep the thing for 5 or 6 years and trade it in, well, hey, no big deal. But if you do want to keep these units in good shape for a long time, again, doing whatever you can to protect them from the elements is going to make a world of difference, okay? So folks, if you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. It makes a huge difference for the channel. Let me know what you thought about the process in the comments below. Catch you in the next video. Bye for now.